Good morning. We're going to begin this morning, after those two great introductions, talking about the importance of the federal role in holding all schools accountable and the importance of the federal role in education of minority students. You know, as civil rights organizations, we have had to depend on the federal government to protect the rights of poor and minority students for many, many years. And for those people who push back on us on what the proper role of the federal government is, I would say that as a longtime educator, I have unfortunately had to fall back on the federal government because we cannot always fall back and trust what the states have done and what the school districts have done. And the federal government has been there to protect the rights of these students. This has happened through legislation. It's happened through court rulings, and through my long career in education, every time there's a reauthorization, I see the law improving, and I see the rights of students better protected. I see the rights and needs of minority and poor students better recognized by people on the Hill and people in the general public. And so I do believe that the federal government has improved the education of low-income and minority students as the years have gone by. It's important as we move forward then that we honor that protection and that we continue to take the best of that protection while we're evolving toward a more perfect, I would say, accountability system for our students and a better education for all students. You know, it's been 10 years, as Wade pointed out, since we reauthorized the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and we need to get a move on. The law did great things. In 2002, we all celebrated what was happening. We celebrated disaggregation. We celebrated specific calls for equity and assessment, specific calls for standards, high standards for all students, and we had much to celebrate and much to implement. In the implementation, we have begun to find the flaws in the Elementary and Secondary Education Act as it was reauthorized in 2002, and we believe we know what needs to be improved. As we move forward, we do recognize that the law was not perfect, and we recognize that it's not sufficient currently for measuring the progress of all students accurately or fairly, and it needs to be strengthened and it needs to be improved. At the same time, though, we need to look at what it does and doesn't do, what it protects and what it doesn't protect, and how we, again, evolve moving forward with the federal role in protecting the rights of these students. We can't turn back the clock on progress, the progress we've made over many, many decades. And part of that progress that we saw so clearly in the last reauthorization is the disaggregation of test scores for low-income students, low-income and minority students. And not only that, the attention this disaggregation brought to these students, the attention it brought to students in school districts where everybody felt like they were doing fine because the average overall looked great for schools. But when you began to disaggregate for many low-income and minority groups, you saw that that wasn't the case. And so that piece is important to maintain in the law as we move forward with reauthorization. We know that we need to improve the measures that we have. The measures are not perfect. We called for strong measures in 2002. Unfortunately, the technology and the willingness was not there, and I think we're at a new place now where we've got better technology, the minds have come together, and we've got better ways to measure progress. We've got to look at better interventions for our students. We, during the 2002 reauthorization, thought we had the answer in terms of what interventions needed to look like, and now we see that they were perhaps bigger clubs rather than the scalpels that we need. And so moving forward, we need to make sure those interventions are better. What it does not mean, though, is dropping the focus on all students. And recent conversations that have focused on the bottom 5% of schools only, we believe takes us back several steps. It is extremely important that we continue to hold the focus on all children who are performing poorly. All groups of children, all schools. It is extremely important that we take advantage of the new tools that have been developed since reauthorization. We take advantage of what we know and what research has taught us, and we blend this with the principles that we think are important, and that's holding schools accountable for all students. We need to create an improved accountability system. We all recognize that. I think we all know what the flaws are in the current system. I think there are ways, we all think there are ways to move forward in retaining the best of what ESCA reauthorization in 2002 brought us and what we know and what we've learned since then. We have new data systems, as I pointed out. We have new assessments. As our schools become increasingly diverse, it is important that we hold the focus, that we use the data systems to our advantage, that we use the latest research to the advantage of all these students, and make sure they are included, all students are included, in an accountability system that works for everyone. That accountability system also needs to have a focus, in addition to looking at achievement and test scores, on graduation rates. Wade alluded to, not only alluded to, gave you the statistics on what our graduation rate has looked like over the last century, actually. It hasn't improved much for low-income and minority groups very much over the last century. And the law, as we see it being reauthorized, must respond to those graduation rates, must continue to be disaggregated, and schools must be held accountable for those graduation rates for all students. As we move forward today, and as you hear from my colleagues, you're going to hear many ideas that we think bolster that core belief that we have to hold all schools, all educators, all adults responsible for the education of all children. So now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Philip Lovell from the Alliance for Excellent Education, who's going to talk to you a little bit about strong accountability for high school students and for all students. Thank you.